that had been like the first time I went since like before college. So it's been like almost 10 years. And I remember like walking around and like looking around at everyone. It's like, are we related? Like, are you
Are
my
you my
cousin?
family? Ooh, should we get started with the
Yes.
episode?
Yes. I'm so excited for today's episode, actually.
I know. I'm really excited for
It's
this
gonna be
topic.
fun.
There's so much to say.
Yes. What is everyone snacking and drinking? I guess I'll just go first. But I've got a spiked hot chocolate. I'm like trying to get really creative here with the drinks because, there's only so many options. But I have some hot chocolate and then just like the instant kind. And then I added some whiskey and it's honestly so good. And then I also have marshmallows on it. I don't think you can see it on the camera, but there's marshmallows as well. So this is my drink that is also a snack. So that's what I have.
Nice. What about you,
Yes.
Christine?
Yeah.
No, Megan, you go. What are you?
Oh, me. I just toasted this olive focaccia. It's so
Ooh.
good. I did not make it. It's from Seawolf here in Seattle, and then I have oil and balsamic.
Yeah.
So I'm dipping that.
Are those plates ones that you made?
Yes, I made this one.
And like a little dipping bowl too.
Wow.
Yeah, and the dipping bowl.
I love it.
You can't really see it, but
So talented.
So,
I'm trying. I'm trying to quit my day job is really what's happening here.
Be a full-time podcaster.
Yeah, truly. Drinking a LaCroix, and I am drinking my grapefruit hibiscus Boochcraft, which is hard kombucha. Christine?
All right. Me, I am drinking bunbeju. Bunbeju, which is like a Korean distilled spirit. And it gets it tastes like Korean pear, like wild pear. It's like a 40 proof liquor.
It's getting lit.
It's getting lit today. Yeah, it's something from Korea, which ties in nicely to our topic for the day, which we're going to be talking about the motherland. And the motherland for us is Korea. So should we go like straight into
Let's
icha?
do it. Let's do it. We're just so excited.
Cheers.
Cheers. Or I guess 짠.
I think what we wanted to talk about in ilcha is as like Korean Americans, what is like the most interesting and distinct thing you remember about visiting Korea, having had grown up in the United States?
There's so many.
So many things.
Why don't we talk about like the first time we went to Korea?
Ooh.
Like where were you? Like how old were you? Where did you
Megan
go?
was in her mom's womb.
No, it was 12 years ago. Well, before this one, it was 12 years. Oh, God. But basically, I was in my mother's womb. At the time,
it counts.
At the time, I feel like it was just super different and new and weird. And like my idea of Korea was like, in like just from watching it in like Korean dramas or something like that, like listening to a few Korean songs at the time. And so it was really interesting. I was also like much younger, so I feel like I didn't really process or get to like feel exactly what it was about the motherland that was great. But I do remember just like liking it so much in general. And
so you
then
were like 20?
I was 20, yeah. I guess I wasn't that young. Was I 20? Well, it would have been 13. So I was like 19. I was like 19-ish. I wasn't that young, but I feel like my brain wasn't developed.
Yeah. Your front lobe, whatever.
Yeah. My frontal lobe was just not fully developed. So I didn't have like the sensibilities to be like, oh, I really like this or I really like that. I think it was just like all super new to me. I definitely have more thoughts because I was just recently there like a month
Mm-hmm.
ago, I definitely have some more thoughts. But like my very first time, it was just kind of like a blur. Like it was cool. So I was eating all this Korean food and like everyone was Korean and it felt like cool and like had a sense of belonging. But maybe
Mm-hmm.
nothing more than that the first time. What about you guys?
My first time, I probably don't remember my first time visiting. I think I was 4. Actually, that was probably the first time. I think it was like
Oh,
when
so young.
I was like 3 or 4, because we used to go like every summer from like when I was 4 until like 8, maybe. So like maybe 4 years in a row in my childhood. And then I didn't go
Mhm.
again until I graduated from high school. So I didn't go for like 10 years. So when I was a kid, like my memories are just like spending like a month or 2 there, because it would be during like summer break, and then just hanging out with my cousins. And I remember we would watch like different Disney movies on VHS and like whatever our what Harmony had and stuff, our grandma. And then we were talking about like watching Hercules, and we are like, oh, like Hercules, like Hercules, and like they like our cousins couldn't understand what we were saying, and we were like describing it to them, and then they're like, ah, Heracles. There's some like language barriers, I guess, that I
Yeah.
recall, but mostly just like Korea was like where my mom's side of the family was, so that was my time to get to know them as a
Mm.
child.
Mm.
Hmm.
What were like some interesting like observations that you had like
When I was
visiting
a
Korea?
kid.
Well, like in when you were a kid, or like so has there been anything that like persisted in terms of observations of like how it's different there? Like even the next time
Mm,
you visited too?
yeah, I remember there was another time my brother and my mom and I were taking a walk in my grandma's neighborhood. And then
Uh-huh.
there was this other like elderly woman who was like walking, like opposite, like towards us. And then my
Mm-hmm.
brother and I just like instinctively, like we're just trained to like bow and like insa, or like which is like to greet or like say hello to an elder. So like we
Mm-hmm.
walk by and we're like, oh, 안녕하세요. And then she was like shocked that we like insaed to her, because I guess like culturally today, like in Korea, like I don't, this is what I hear. I'm not there to like witness it like all the time, but apparently there is like not as much of that like respect, I guess you can say, like to
Mm.
elders. So yeah, she was like shocked when my brother and I just like said hello to this random lady, which could be part like in America, that's very common to just like greet strangers. And then
Yeah.
also, we lived with my grandpa when we were growing up, or like with my parents and my grandpa. So I think we
Mm.
just had very like traditional upbringings. So that comes to mind. What about you, Christine?
Yeah.
Me, I think I never had Korean, or like I never had family living in Korea. So most of my mom and dad's side that I know live in the United States. So there was like really no reason to go and visit Korea. When we visited, it was right after high school. So I think like the most interesting thing is like being like having my parents grow up in Korea and then like immigrate to the United States and then have their child have this like whole American experience, and then going back for the first time in high school and feeling like such an outsider, like not belonging. That's like something that I was like very much processing when I went to Korea, is that like people would, when I stood in line, they would talk about me and my sister in Korean, thinking that like we didn't understand because we don't carry ourselves, like we don't dress ourselves the way that Koreans do. We had like darker skin. We don't speak Korean. So that was like a very interesting experience. And I think just generally like not trying to find ways that I relate to Koreans in Korea, but then having that gap be so large, but trying to find similarities and experiences is like the bridge that I've been trying to build ever since then. But it still is like a kind of like alienating experience, but it's like I think something that I will be working on towards like from that time to like now, is just how can I relate more back to Korea, because it is the motherland, right? Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I kind of had a similar experience too. Like it's cool because we all quote unquote look the same, right? And like we speak the same language, but because we're from different places, it
Mhm.
does feel a little bit jarring, the contrast when you're there. I remember the first time I was there, I was wearing like a tube top,
Oh my god.
which I mean,
I have
at
a
the
sore throat.
time,
I need to hear this one.
yeah, at the time, like you're not, it's not, people aren't in like headscarves or like, it's not like that. But I think, it was a little bit more, the country was like a little more like reserved, and like
Mm.
women were covered up a little bit more. Like you don't really see a lot of
Mm-hmm.
women walking around with tube tops. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of an interesting thing because, you look at the person to your left and right and they're like you, but like they're just so different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like a
Dude,
very interesting.
I was thinking of a similar thing, and it was when I think it was when I went in high school, so it was like my first time back in 10 years from
Mhm.
visiting as a child. And then at the time, it was like the thing was to wear like spaghetti straps. And I think I might have even had like two layered. But anyway, they were like spaghetti strap, like camis basically. And then I'm wearing like short shorts. And then I'm like tan because I was a swimmer. So like I remember just like people would look at me really weird when I would dress like that.
Yeah.
When in LA, like that is a very normal outfit for a teenager to be wearing. So, yeah, very different expectations when it comes to like your appearance for
Oh
sure.
my gosh.
Like
You
the
guys,
way you dress and all of that. Yeah, what's up?
when I went to Korea the second time, it was like the year after I went for the first time. So it was like my freshman year of college. And I had a friend in high school who ended up enlisting in the American army, but then he was stationed in Korea.
Oh.
So he's like of Mexican descent. And so he and I were hanging out. And I was also wearing a tube top, but it was like a tube top jumpsuit. And it was like my mom's. And I was
Mm.
like, oh, wear this out tonight, hang out with my friend. And then we went or like to the areas that he knew, like where his friends hung out in the army. We were walking around like at nighttime, like we got some drinks, we got some food. And then this old Korean man like starts like berating me. Like he starts like calling me like a dirty, like whatever. He like spits in front of my feet. And I think he thought that I was a prostitute. So like
Oh
Oh
my
my
God.
like a
God.
Korean prostitute, but I was just wearing my mom's like Kathy's jumpsuit and hanging out with my high school friend who was in
Kathy.
the army. But it was like I could like I had to like process that. I was like, why is he so upset that I'm like walking around with my friend? That was like one of those like whoa moments of, can't dress like that. Like if I had looked more like dressed more like a Korean, then that wouldn't have happened. But
Yeah.
I was like, the booty shorts, the tank top, the tube tops, like did not fly back
Yeah.
then.
Another thing I'm reminded of is I would get questions from family members, but also even strangers like shopkeep like people ladies working at like a clothing store.
Mhm.
And they would like start to figure out that I'm American, right?
Yeah.
But we're like speaking in Korean. They always ask things like, oh, like, do you like hamburgers better or like Korean food? Or
Stop.
like and then like, oh, do you like
I see.
American men or Korean men? Or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
always asking like those kinds of questions. Actually, it was not do you like hamburgers better? It was like, oh, do you like eat hamburgers all the time? Like was the
Yeah, yeah,
question.
exactly. Oh my God.
It's so interesting.
So
Yeah.
funny. What are other things that like come up when it comes to like your memories in Korea?
Mm.
I mean, I feel like I literally have two, right? And it's very distinctive because it's like I went 12, 13 years ago.
Mhm.
And then I went a month ago. And so
Mhm.
those two experiences are so vastly different. I kind of oddly felt like more at home this past time I went. And I think it's
Mm.
because I didn't have the clothing like situation because like it was freezing and so everyone was in a puffer coat and I'm in a puffer coat, so like there's no, there's nothing there. I mean, there were like very interesting kind of jarring moments like when we first got there, like the way that like the cab ajashis, like they're so aggressive and like kind of like intense.
Mm.
And the word intense or like the intensity of things kept coming
Mhm.
up for me. And it was also, I think, because like Sean was experiencing it at the same time with me as well, and so it was like gaining a different perspective from Sean, but yeah, it was like the intensity level of everything was like dialed up to like
Mhm.
past 100. So like the food you're eating, like how hot things are, like how like really curated certain things can be, and like how busy the subway is, like everything is just like so intense.
Mhm.
And it was not that it was bad, but it was just so different because like the first time going, and then the, you know, the decade that had passed, I always kind of, in my brain, Korea was like pretty small.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
like, you know, because we live in America, you know, and America is huge, and Korea is still small, you know, feels relatively small, and like size wise it is, but Seoul is so massive. And I think I talked about this like a few episodes ago, but I was talking about how we looked it up and like it's bigger than New York, which was like mind blowing to me. But yeah, it was like just very interesting. And I think, but generally, like I just loved being around like other Koreans, and like, I don't know, it just felt really, and I don't know if this is like a false sense of safety, but like I just felt really
Mm.
safe.
Mhm.
And there was like this like unspoken like camaraderie.
Yeah.
And it was like just really nice to be in and
Mm.
around.
It just sounded like a pretty like sensory overloaded experience coming from like quiet, calm Seattle.
That's true. Yeah.
And then, but
Nice
then
Yeah.
also like,
And
nature.
we were also in Taiwan the week before, and
yeah.
Oh.
Taiwan feels very like much smaller, more neighborhoody, more rural,
Oh.
more quiet. Like
Yeah.
that is one thing that I've noticed a lot in Taiwan, where like everything is so quiet. Not a lot of people are
Mm.
talking on the subway or on the way to this and that, like on the streets. Like everyone's really quiet.
Mhm.
And in Korea, it's just like
Obnoxious.
loud and yeah, like super obnoxious. And like Korean ajashis are like, you know, the drunk ajashis at restaurants are like yelling and cussing at each other. And like there's a bunch of people smoking outside and spitting. And like, it's just like, oh, it's like a lot. Though, I mean, those aspects I think I'm not necessarily like proud of, or like, you know, like love those aspects. But, you know, kind of, I guess, comes with just there being a lot of people and
Yeah.
Yeah.
a small space.
What you said, and I don't know if this like maybe this goes into icha, but like you were mentioning how it felt in a way you felt safer because like you like everyone looks, you know, the same,
Mhm.
you're in a homogenous country, and that's interesting because it's almost like because you blend in, right, especially in the wintertime when like you're all wearing puffer
Hmm.
coats. But then
Hmm.
I wonder if it's because our experience growing up and like being raised in the States is like we always stood out because
Yes.
we're Asian and we're different, especially if like we were around more like white people or just a more diverse group of people.
Mhm.
So that's just like an interesting observation, is like I wonder if it like there's that like positive like feeling around it because we finally blend in and like quote unquote belong physically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then our because our whole like experience growing up has been like sticking out, you know?
Yeah.
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 And it's also because like there's I think another layer there where when you're growing up in America, it's a very individualistic
Mm.
culture, right?
Yeah.
Like we stand out because we're Asian, but also like you're supposed to stand out, right? Like you're supposed to have this freedom of expression and be, you know, your own person and do all this stuff. And then so there's like that layer as well. But then in Korea,
Mhm.
they don't really celebrate individualism. Like that's not really a thing. You actually, you know, you need to be cohesive with your neighbors and your partners and your whatever, you know. So yeah, I mean,
Mm.
that's super interesting. Yeah, for sure. I think we have definitely dived into
Yeah, we've
Icha.
Yeah.
We have arrived.
yes.
I think like when I went to Korea the last time, it was last November, so it's been like a little over
Mm.
a year. And that had been like the first time I went since like before college. So it's been like almost 10 years. And I remember like walking around and like looking around at everyone. It's like, are we related? Like,
Are
are you
you
my
my
cousin?
family?
Because I don't know, like, if I have family in Korea. I only know, like, the people who live in the
Mm.
United States, but it's like, I wonder how we're related or, like, it seems like our ancestors, like, had brush shoulders, and I, like, imagine, like, back in the day in, like, the Joseon era, like, how our, like, ancestors, like, hung out or something. So that's, like, one funny, like, imagination that I have when I, like, see Korean people in Korea. And then, like, the second thing is, like, what I've lived in, like, different countries. I, like, lived, like, abroad, and I always try to understand, like, how their way of living in this country is different from the way that I grew up, or, like, the, like, cultural norms, like, the things that are, like, faux pas, or things that you shouldn't do or say, or the things that you should do that's, like, appropriate. Trying to learn those, like, mannerisms and behaviors and ways of, like, carrying yourself, is something that, like, I started to study because I feel like I am still a student to, like, Korean culture, even though I am like, of Korean descent. But it's so wildly different from the way that like, what my outlook in life is and the way that I've been raised. So I think, like, when I go to Korea, like, when I went, there was a lot of, like, asking questions, of trying to, like, frame what is, like, socially, like, true amongst, like, my peers, and what they believe is possible and what they think is crazy. And I'm just, like, so fascinated by all of it. So that's,
Hmm.
like, one interesting thing that I, like, picked up in my last trip, is how different things are, but then
Mm.
also, like, ways that it's, like, similar to, like, the Korean American experience too.
What do you think is like the most unique thing about like being Korean American? Because it's, we are
Mhm.
American, and like when I'm
Mm.
traveling abroad, I
Yeah.
always say I'm American. I'm from LA, California. And then
Mm,
like, I might share, oh yeah, but like I'm Korean, blah blah. But it's like always like I'm American. But
yeah.
I do think it's just there's a distinct Korean American culture, this like blended thing. So yeah, what do you think are some of the unique aspects of that identity?
One thing that, like, pops up in my head is, in Korea, what I've observed is that there are these, like, hierarchies, like, social hierarchies. It's not like a caste system, but, like, there is, like, there's, like, this, like, leveling of people and, like, what's possible. So when you go into, like, the schooling system, like, you're, like, ranked 1 to, like, whatever, a million, I don't know. And whatever you do, like, your job is how you rank determines, like, your success in life, and, like, the schools that you go to, and everything seems a little bit more like there are these, like, layers of class. But then, in as, like, someone who grew up in the United States as a Korean American, sometimes, like, that system, there's, like, more ways around the system, or ways to dream to achieve something, to, like, hack the system. Maybe you can go the traditional, like, academic path and get a, like, stable career in that way, but there seems to be more possibilities, or, like, at least more optimism around what the possibilities are. That's one thing that I noticed, but I
Mhm.
might be
Yeah.
generalizing. It's one observation that I had. I don't know. What do you guys think
Mm.
of that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I see what you're saying. And I think my observation is like very similar to that. I think it's like what it's just like a higher level. I think you have what you're saying is more detailed, but I feel like Korean Americans are really adaptable. They're very like open to change. And I think that's because you have this American culture of like being your own person and doing things the way that you want to do it, and like things like hacking the system and being whatever level you are doesn't really matter necessarily, if we're talking generally. And then in Korea, where those things are really important and like respect and levels are really important, so you kind of understand that part as well. And so I feel like Korean Americans have kind of both of that, and so they're like they can kind of adapt and change and are good at kind of being who they need to be where they are.
Mm.
So I think that's maybe an observation that I have with distinctly being Korean American.
One thing like that's been interesting for me as I've been I'm married and like have a set of in-laws, right? And so just seeing the differences in our upbringings between like my upbringing and
Mm.
Dane's. Because even though we're both Korean American, like born and raised in the US and like have Korean parents, like my dad immigrated at a really young age, so he's very Americanized. My mom is like a little more Korean. We lived with my grandpa as well. So there's like more tradition there. But then Dane's parents like both immigrated together and like don't speak English, and it's just like a very different world where I never had to play the role of like my parents' translator, and I know that's a very common experience
Mhm.
for a lot of children of immigrants.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's like I almost like recently in the past like 5 years have begun to realize like I'm not as Korean as I thought, but I always thought I was really Korean
Mm.
because like I ate Korean food every single day for dinner that my mom would make, that my grandpa would want, and we'd wear hanbok on New Year's and all that stuff. But then I like had this weird almost identity crisis of like, am I like not as Korean as I thought? Yeah, so that's what I've been thinking
Mm.
about with my like Korean American identity.
Like this last time I was in Korea, it felt very much like a melting pot.
Mm.
Like, because you don't really think of, like, when I think of a melting pot, you think of America, right? And there's like so many different people on different walks of life, and they're all here. And, we talk about like the American dream and this and that. And like, so we think of the melting pot, and like, and especially from, being from LA, like, it's very much more diverse. So, like, I've always thought LA or California or the US was more of a melting pot. But when I went to Korea this time, like, I saw so many different people of different colors, different race, different everything. And it felt very much like a global destination, a global place. Like, more and more, it just like and when I say more and more, I mean like more and more throughout the trip. Like, it just felt right to like be there. And like, I didn't feel so much like, oh man, like, I don't know what it's gonna be like in Korea. Like, am I gonna be able to fit in, or like, am I gonna stick out or whatever? Like, it just kind of worked really nicely,
Yeah.
and kind of melded really nicely. So I think, like, because it's only been a month, I am still like definitely processing some of the things that I was feeling, and like what it then means and how it translates, to like my identity as like a Korean American and things like that. But yeah, I feel like I'm literally just like
Processing
processing it
now
right now.
because this is therapy.
It's true.
As a Korean American, I think about like my own existence, but at the same time, it's like in the frame or like context of like timelines of like how I got to become a Korean American, and like learning of the reasons why I am Korean American. And like there's all these like historical events that happened before, right? We were born. Like there was like the Japanese occupation, then there was Korean War, there was like the divide between like the Korean Peninsula, North and South, and all of like the ways that my family has traveled to like seek opportunities and have to like immigrate to the United States, and like that being the reason why these experiences are so different. I think like we're in this, like, I, at least in my generation, think about how we're at this like pivotal point, I think, right? Between having that Korean experience because our parents immigrated here, but then having grown up here, and then like when we have children in the United States, their parents like had grown up in the United States and had the American experience. So I think about like what gets lost after, like culturally, in terms of like cultural identity. These are like things that I think about a lot now in my 30s, of like what will get lost, what like me processing my Korean American identity and feeling like a lot has been lost culturally. Um but also gained as like an American. I just like hope that I can hold on to and bottle all of the like wonderful things about Korean culture down to like my children. And like one interesting thing is that after I had my first Korean boyfriend, I like swore off Korean men. I was like, I am not gonna date like a Korean guy, because like there's so much like toxic masculinity there, and there's a lot of like bottled up trauma from like their dads and all the things that they had to endure of like having to grow up in like wartime or like during famine periods or whatever, right? So that gets like passed down through generations. And then now I feel more aligned to wanting to marry a Korean person for some reason. I'm open, like, you know, my hands are open to the universe. But I always think about like how nice it would be to at least instill more of like the Korean identity back into my child, so that they feel a sense of like belonging, um, when they do go to Korea versus when their mom went to Korea. It was like kind of like an alienating experience.
Something I do worry about sometimes is that my children, future children, potential children, whatever, like won't speak Korean very well. Because like I'm not the best, and I went to Korean school, and then I had my mom who's fluent, you know, in Korean to help me as well, and I lived with my grandpa and like all that. So yeah, so I just feel like it's gonna get lost like down the line, which is kind of sad to think about. At the same time, it's like there's this new kind of, as we were talking about, there's this Korean American culture that's been, you know, forming over the last few generations. So there could be something new and even cooler that happens with that identity. But that is something I think about with the future. Yeah.
I mean, they'll have Duolingo.
Yeah. And also like,
Babel.
but like
Babel.
there's and like Korea is just like so globally known now, like compared to when we were in elementary school, and it's like, are you Chinese or Japanese? It's like, I'm Korean. Like, what's Korean? And like, you
Yeah.
know, to now like BTS, like all that stuff, like everybody knows Korea. So maybe, you know, maybe it'll be like they'll be even more surrounded by Korean culture.
Yeah, that's true.
When I think about like my sister's kids, like they are in part raised by their grandparents. And so while your parents are like present in your children's lives, I'm sure that they'll get like the essence of like the Korean language. And also there's a lot of like Korean language taught in like American schools now. You know how like Spanish
Oh.
was taught in like Southern California?
Mm.
Now it's like there's Korean classes. It was like one high school in the valley that taught Korean, but
Yeah.
now it's like taught in elementary schools, which is kind of cool. One other thing that I wanted to talk about was like, because the like advent of like Korean culture being more widespread through like media, through music and like movies and all that, am so like happy to see like Korean men being like
Sex
desired by
symbols.
sex symbols. And that was like not something that was
That's so
like,
true.
you know, prevalent in like the ways that we grew up. But like when I see my sister's kids, they're like so proud to be Korean. They're like so proud to take like Korean food to school. Like
Oh my
Kim is sold at
god.
Trader Joe's. Like what?
Yeah.
You know? So it's like a
That's
very
actually, I'm like really,
what?
that's making me emotional.
Why?
I don't know. Because I was like when I was in elementary school, like I
Mhm.
was so like ashamed or like embarrassed like to be
Mhm.
Korean. Um,
Mm.
like I
Yeah.
didn't even want to call my mom 엄마, like you know, after school, like if like I'm calling, you know, they're like, you're calling like mom, like blah blah. Like I was embarrassed to say 엄마 because it's like different. So then it's like
Wow.
to hear that your sister's kids are like so happy to be Korean and take Korean food to school, when
Yeah.
we would like take mandu to school and be like really embarrassed because it smells.
Yeah.
And like, our teacher was like, can you put that kimchi bokkeumbap away? Like it's
Yeah,
stinking.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
so sweet.
Yeah.
Progress.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that.
That's
Wait,
so
that
sweet.
reminds me of there was this TikTok, and it's this white
I
lady
knew, I was
who's like,
wondering when TikTok
when
was gonna
TikTok would
come
come
up.
up.
So
Yeah, like there's got to be a TikTok reference in every episode. So
yes.
Christine's probably seen it because she's on TikTok with me. But it's this white lady, and she's like, "Yeah, this is our second time coming to this Ding Feng Chung place, right?" And she's talking about Din Tai Fung, and then her
Mhm.
son, her teenage son. Luckily, she's like still recording this, and she included and uploaded it. But the teenage son is like, "You literally got every single word wrong. It's Din Tai Fung." Like he like corrected her, and then there were like
And he was like
comments where it was like,
furious.
yeah, their
Yeah.
comments were like, I have hope like for the future generations, like that they're
Yeah.
just more accepting and like they are more inclusive and like want to take the time to pronounce three very simple words correctly at that.
Yeah.
So that just reminded me of that TikTok.
As much as we can like bag on social media and like all of the bad stuff that comes out of that, it is so cool to see people embracing like just things that we grew up being really embarrassed about. It's so cool. And then like another point is like when I went to Korea this last time, there was so much inspiration. And I think there was a lot of inspiration for me specifically. There was so much, and for Sean as well, but like for us, there was so much inspiration around food. And like I love how, because like I think, I mean, all of us have, you know, food is like a really big part of like our lives, all three of us.
Oh,
And
good.
obviously, yeah, I mean, a lot of people can appreciate food, but like I feel like us three just have like a very, you know, food is like a big part of who we are. And I feel like I almost got like I got a glimpse of maybe why and where that came from. Because Koreans and their food, man, it's just like the best. They're so like intentional and there's so many different practices and it's just like so much fun to see all of that in action there and then like bring home some of these like inspirations. So like one of them was like Sean is like super into makgeolli, which is
Mm.
makgeolli is like a fermented drink where you basically take three things, which is water, rice, and nuruk, which is like a germinated like wheat product that has like different bacteria and fungus in it. I think it's also fungus. And then you ferment it and it turns into like an alcoholic beverage that's like really like fun and funky and cloudy. And we took a class there and then now like we've already brewed like a bunch of different types of makgeolli at home and like that's something that I think
Ooh.
like I want to like pass on like the
Yeah.
love for food and the culture around food and the making things yourself like the fermenting like things like that. I think I definitely want to like instill and like pass on and like figure out how to do that because I
Yeah.
just said a few episodes ago that I'm not having kids, but like we'll figure that
To the neighborhood children.
yeah, to the neighbor.
Teach the kids how to
Yes.
make makgeolli.
But yeah, that's definitely something that I'm like really it was like a proud moment and it was like a very like cool thing
Yeah.
to experience just like going to this country and like people just taking care of the things that they eat and like have there being such a strong culture around food. It was like really, really cool.
I love that like Sean is also like interested in like
Oh my
Korean
God.
culture and he's
He
like
was
experiencing all of it.
obsessed.
For
Like, I
context,
mean,
Sean is Taiwanese.
oh yeah, yeah. Sean is
Mhm.
Taiwanese, and that was really sweet too to like be in Taiwan and like see him, and you know that
Mm.
was his motherland. But then moving over to Korea, I also feel like he like oddly it felt like there was like a even deeper understanding of like me through being
Mm.
in Korea because I think he just like really got he like finally understood why I need to have like a boiling hot like soup in front of me and then after I eat the soup I had to have like noodles cooked in it and then after the noodles like I had to make like fried rice like this is like you know it's like a very common thing in Korea
It's
like
like
you
Mm.
gotta do it.
there's a label for that. It's called Tanbanminjeok. It means like people of like hot soup. Or, like Koreans are people of
Oh,
hot
I
soup.
love that.
we are hot soup
Oh my
people.
god. Hot
Yeah.
soup people, man.
Merch?
It's really cool.
Oh my god. Let's have like a shirt or like a tote or whatever with what is it? What is it again, Christine?
Tanbanminjeok.
And then we're gonna, it's like
Tambakinjo.
three girls like in a bowl of hot soup. Like,
I love it. I love it. It's
Oh my
so
god.
fun.
I got chills
Oh
though, just
god.
like hearing you talk about the way that like Sean is coming to understand you by have like visiting Korea, and
Yeah.
the like culture still runs very deep through you, like even though you grew up here. I love
It's in my
that.
veins.
It's in
yeah,
your
the hot
veins,
soup.
it's in your blood.
Well, we'll have to do a trip to Korea, us three, at some
That
point.
would
Oh,
be
that would be
so
so
epic.
much fun.
So much fun.
Any final thoughts about being Korean American? Maybe like, what's the thing you're most proud of?
Someone told me that Koreans have had historically this like more prevalent than not this like feeling of han, which is like this like deep Korean sorrow, right? And I think that like now that the historical events, like the progress that Korea has made, like economically and socially, and like we're at this like world stage, and like Koreans across the world can also benefit from that. There's more of this like feeling of hung, which is like joy, Korean joy that's spreading. And I think that like I feel that when I connect to other Koreans, and it's instead of that deep sorrow of like connecting on trauma and everything that happened to Korea, like being torn apart, there's still that like resilience to pursue joy and preserve Korean culture and like hold on to it and be so like prideful of being Korean, no matter like where you grew up. So I think like in that sense, I like the optimism that's still being carried through generations to like want to make the most like create the most beauty out of being Korean, is something that I feel like very proud of.
Oh, I love it. This is like not as deep, but like I love when people just taste Korean food and they're just like, oh, like it's so good.
Oh,
like
yeah.
especially
YouTube show.
especially non-Koreans. But yeah, like we in our household we watch a lot of Korean Englishmen, which is like a
Oh,
YouTube
so
channel.
good. He's so
Yeah, and
funny.
Yeah.
he's this British guy who just like really, he is the embodiment of like cultural appreciation. Like he just like fully embraces and loves Korean culture, and then he like shares with other people. Dane is the one who introduced me to his channel, and it's because like the way he describes it is like, he's introducing especially a lot of British people to Korean culture. And it's like in a way where they learn about it, like the authenticity behind all the different types of food. And it's like from someone that they're familiar with. So it just like makes it easier for them to like relate and understand. And then like the byproduct is like he's spreading the like Korean culture and love of Korean food to people who otherwise would never be exposed to it. So yeah, that makes me very proud.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We need to like link his channel or something
Yes,
down below,
yes.
because yeah, it's so much fun. They create such a fun
Mhm,
atmosphere.
Yeah.
mhm.
I feel like mine is kind of related as well. Like it's just really cool to see Koreans everywhere, like in every industry, in every part of like pop culture or current event or whatever. Like we're just seeing a lot of bomb ass like talented Koreans again, like in sports and music and food and in all aspects. And it's just really nice to see them get uplifted as well. Yeah, it's always just like a proud moment seeing like another Dave Chang, Netflix series where he
Yeah.
he talks through like food, and like it's just really cool. And like seeing obviously like the World Cup was really awesome, and Sunny, our boy,
Yeah.
is
And then
like
Christine's
killing
like, "Are
it.
you my relative?" Christine.
I know.
How
Are
are
we
you
related?
We're related
That's
somehow.
my
Are you my
cousin
cousin?
on the TV.
So just
Yeah.
proud of our peoples.
Yeah.
Yeah, compete.
Oh, I love it. Okay, well, cheers to a future samcha trip to Korea, so we can just,
Yeah,
just
cheers.
revel in all the Korean culture. that we love.
To the motherland.
To the motherland. Thanks
Yeah.
for listening, whoever's out there.
Whoever's out there.
Stay tuned, stay connected on all of our channels. We have
At samcha.
all the channels at Samcha Podcast. You can email us, you can DM us, you can call us, you can watch our YouTube, you can listen to this episode again, you can...
Yeah.
I think that's it.
All the things. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.